Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Meticulous Talks for May 27th. I am Cursed Chords.
I'm solving problems.
And I'm Hifrog.
And, well, I know for me it's been an incredibly busy week getting back into things after Everfree Northwest last weekend. I mean, I guess you guys weren't there, so you don't have that. But you guys watched the stream, right? Or something, maybe?
Yeah.
I was busy coughing up a lung and getting over this bug.
Right.
But, yeah. I've just been ill. I'm finally starting to feel a bit better, so woo!
You sound okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got constant water on me just in case.
Sure. Yeah. Well, anyway, there was a whole lot of developments, I guess. You have at least looked at the results, though, right? Solving.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I haven't closed the tab with it for a while. It's just sort of there.
yeah, I always have it bookmarked as just the meta, basically, the latest convention result. So I guess kind of the high points of the whole thing. I mean, we all know there was a lot of farming decks, but there were a whole bunch of new decks as well. For it, if anyone wants to call them out.
Well, the most interesting thing for me was seeing some orange-blue. That's something I didn't expect.
Yeah, the orange-blue farming in core.
And not only farming, we also had an aggro deck using blue net.
That's right. That was in Harmony, but yeah.
No, I think blue
I've got it up
orange,
right now.
blue was...
Blue/orange aggro.
Oh, I see it. Yeah. My apologies. That's in... There's a blue orange in both lists. Yes.
Yeah. I was talking specifically to core.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Let's have a look at that one then. Okay. So yeah, we've got this blue and orange list, this core one up.
Got everybody's favorites. Night Glider, Thunderlane.
Essentially. Rainbow Pirate as well. There's a tiny amount of white in here for those allos as well. Obviously not enough to be...
Allo may as well be colorless.
Yeah. The blue-orange mullet, I know, is a card that I heard people talk about a fair amount as actually excellent value.
Yeah, I mean, turns out moving things at immediate speed for 180 is pretty good.
Even without the... I mean, there are other pirates in here, but you're almost usually not going to use that third ability.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's possible people perhaps just saw that and said, oh, pirate tribal card, pirate tribal's not going to be a thing, but...
Honestly, I didn't take note of it because I just sort of instinctively thought it said main phase.
Ah.
Rather than immediate, so I was like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I remember Mystery Mare as well as a card that I saw locally a while back. Only a singleton in here, but it's still a powerful play. As a 2-for-1 that frightens as well. Frightens or unfrightens if you want, I guess.
I don't think I've ever seen it unfrighten anything.
Awesome. This world of sticks might want I don't know, your Night Glider or your Big Mac or something to get unfrightened.
Hmm.
Now, I am actually. Hang on a second. I'm looking at this at this problem list, and well, we don't have anybody here who actually played the deck. Oh, by the way, welcome, Grandpaws. I'm sure that's you in the chat. That is actually no. That is he actually does make a good point. Not for this deck in particular, but for the olden days for Popper when you would run Pipsqueak Farm. Yeah, Mr. Mayor works well as a. That's usually the way that you cycle him. You cutie mark him, you frighten him, and then you unfrighten him, and then you cutie mark him again. And Mr. Mayor is probably a good option for that. Anyway, I was going to make a point about this problem deck up here because we've got three starting problems. We've got Totally Lost, Second Chance, and Trading Traditions. And again, this is perhaps more of a point for anybody who's actually familiar enough with the deck to know how it plays. But if I look at Trading Traditions, wondering like what the opening is supposed to be. I suppose that that gets you one at Volt Stadium, I guess. Probably. Good enough play.
Yeah, and I mean you can play Loyal Pony and flip your main then, and you'll have free orange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is everything this deck is really needs.
Yeah, if you're on turn 2, then yeah, that'll allow you to play like Mullet to the other problem, and there's your DFO right there. Oh wait, no, that takes 518. Oh. Oh. Because okay, clearly you have an easy DFO generally with Night Glider, Hasty Night Glider, when you start with Totally Lost, right? Provided that the opponent's running some relatively small starting problem.
To be fair, they all have 5 on your side to start. I think the other 2 are in there just because they have 5. Because Bluna +2 is the easiest thing in the world to do, especially with a deck list like this.
It's a good point. Yeah, and it is worth pointing out with Loyal Pony that you can order the triggers such that Luna flips, right? Without having to pay 2 to move her. Or is that? Hang on a second. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here.
I think it's.
Yeah,
I think
you
it's
can
too late once she started resolving. Maybe.
Oh, I see. All right.
I lost Sluden's wording. When you play a friend to this card's problem, you may turn this card over.
All right, shoot.
I would guess it's too late once it's already entered because it's more caring about when you start playing it.
As far as I remember in the rules, there's like a rule which says what happens when you play a card, and the fact that triggers like when you play a card happen and a friend entering play happen at the same time. Like it's under the same rule.
But it's not a friend entering play trigger, it's when you play?
Yeah, and both of them happen at the same time.
Yeah,
like
both of them at the same time. Yeah.
They're under the same rule.
Yeah, I think I see that now. Yeah. But either way, that's still.
JP said no, and I'm not sure what he said no to.
He said no to me. It was to my assertion that you could flip and play dash at the same time. So, anyway, Bluna is still Bluna. Tricks up the wazoo. Yeah. I know the deck that kind of caught my attention most would be this. At BabsCon was our first introduction to the Seleno Blue style, this Selena purple deck that was played in core by Big Cheese and Grandpaws. At least those are the ones we saw in top 8. I think there might have been a couple of other people playing it. Was an interesting kind of repurposing of the design, as it were. Let me just get it here.
I honestly didn't think that's what you were going to say.
Oh, what did you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to be like Tempest Pink, because of your love affair with the card.
It's a good point. We can talk about that later. So this is kind of notated in the results post that this deck is noted as a control combo, as it were, whereas the original Seleno Blue is definitely aggro combo, and it certainly shows. Like this is the originalist was totally bent around scoring as many points as possible, and this is more of a I'm gonna appreciate having a couple troublemakers out and get points from Seleno, but for the most part, the deck is actually built around protecting your Tempest and your Cerberus troublemakers, which is cool. One thing that's strange to me is I just recently tried to build a purple-blue list, and it's like almost all of the purple-blue multicolor cards are control-oriented, which is a little strange, just because you expect there to be some variety. And kind of the interesting thing is that Twilight and Spike are one of the ones that's kind of aggro-ish, and it's the only one that's in here out of purple-blue multicolor cards. And
Twilight and Spike are still pretty good control, I must say.
Oh, definitely. That movement on your own friends can be useful for Zecora. If you want to block a main from a face-off. Useful for Pony Pirate if you want to frighten something. And of course, you get the movement of someone else away as well. So, yeah. You guys can probably hear that on my end, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
I think I've got OBS filtering that out, but anyway. Construction, always a fun time around my apartment. Anyway, yeah. Well, since you mentioned that Tempest Pink deck, I suppose we can take a quick look at it too. Thank you for reminding me.
Because honestly, out of the list here, it's the only one that I was like, huh? When I first sort of opened up the tournament result.
Okay. Tempest Pink. You're right, I haven't actually looked at this deck yet. So, this is purple, pink.
Has some white.
Because photo finish is a card.
White for photo finish and for Changeling Throne, but...
And the throne is a card.
Yeah. White for the cards that score points in the classical control tradition. Hang on a second. 3, 5, 8, 9, 10 troublemakers is actually quite a lot for a control deck.
I guess the lack of sneak attack, etc.
Maybe.
Or general card. I don't know. There's Selena.
Yeah, Selena is pretty excellent for that regard. And actually, Apprentice Sorcerer is another card that, I mean, it's definitely good. It's, but you don't see it particularly often. I remember, and this is a pretty good piece of purple entry, especially for a control deck like this. one that's a little bit lacking in immediate speed face-off tricks, to be frank, right? I mean, we've got Food Fight, we've got Nap Cakes, we've got...
We've also got Party Clashers.
Party Clashers.
Can serve with a face-off trick.
Mm-hmm.
Also Sunset, Clever Calculator.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sunset's an okay one.
Discord being flipped just kind of is a thing.
Yeah, actually, with those Selenas, you can be relatively safe. Or, yeah, you definitely can flip those Discords if you want to. I imagine that's probably what he's in the deck for, because if you wanted a more reliable kind of move stuff away trick, you run Magical Pony, generally.
Mm-hmm. Also, the other thing that caught me about this deck as soon as I opened it is that it's got 47 cards.
Yeah, you noticed that as well.
As an advocate for always running 45, it was kind of like, huh?
You could probably cut makeovers from here and...
Makeovers, maybe. I assume we're running, Trading Traditions, of course.
I mean, though, once Trading Traditions is gone, unless you've got the Discord or Selena out, you can't play anything pink.
Or white.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, there's no entry except makeover.
Yeah, makeover is your only path to white. Unless...
I would still use Singing Barrels, though.
Yeah, generally you would.
So makeover has a really high flip.
Yeah, the 6 is nice.
Yeah.
And I guess because you're running 3 of Selena, being able to sort of dig for cards, sort of specifically is fairly easy.
Grandpa's points out,
especially if you get Sunset out to go. Especially if you get Sunset out to go, stick 2 cards on top, get rid of them, draw.
Yeah. Yeah, Grandpa's points out that we are missing resource removal, which is a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Mimics are kind of resource denial.
Yeah, to a degree.
I'm curious what Party Clashers and Raffle are for. Like, I don't see a friend that you can use it on.
Party Clasher?
Yeah, like, what do you banish?
Let me see here. So you've got... Okay, you could, in theory, do Selena. You could trigger her again if you wanted to. But no, that's not
you can reset Starlight. You can get Discord. You can put Photo Finish under it if you're expecting something like a Captain Jack, and in general, Discord's good for when you're expecting Captain Jack.
That's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, and otherwise, there's not a huge amount of choices, but I think the choice is because farming's good and a lot of it uses Captain Jack. You can just go Discord, put something important underneath it. Oh no, I have this.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that is actually legitimate. That protects cards against like Party Hard and stuff too.
And Party of One and all sorts of stuff.
And main 6?
Yeah, and
yeah,
6.
because if they go, I'll retire everything, the card still goes back to its owner.
Yeah. That is interesting. And then, of course, since Photo Finish never has to do anything except for that one window where she triggers, you just tie her in or Discord in the priority window right before it. That is actually a neat trick. And it's true. The other Discord also has an enters play trigger, if you'd like.
Yeah, I did put that.
Oh. Okay.
I said like you can reset Starlight. There's Discord and being able to reuse like Selena. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as I said, I think one of the main reasons is because it actually is really useful against a lot of big cards right now, just to protect stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the usual anti-farm tools. Box is really good. We have no way to recur a resource, but that's fine. We do have a way to, with 3 nap cakes and those 3 food fights, we have a lot of ways to get rid of Big Mac whenever he comes into the field. Probably before he gets a chance to eat anything, so box is pretty secure.
And even the party planner's there to hit Mac in a slow way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. All in all, this is actually kind of cool.
Honestly, out of everything I've seen, this is the one that I'm like, ooh, when I look at it.
Yeah.
Actually seems kind of interesting and fun. Just because I'd be all paranoid with one's capability to get colours.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
And I'm guessing the turn 1 play is Tempest into Changeling mimics, and just name relevant card type as soon as possible.
Pretty much, yeah. Those are. We can occasionally. Oh, hang on a second. So this is a deck that's you're always going to be flipping Tempest turn 1, right? Otherwise, you have no colors. So, yeah, Mimics is the only reasonable choice. Yeah, I think my experience playing Tempest says I don't think Staff is really necessary in this kind of deck. I know that sounds strange because Staff is awesome, but
I often don't use Staff in my Tempest decks.
Yeah,
it is just a good card on its own. Full stop. End of story.
So I don't know. I'd probably get rid of that to try to make some room for a little bit of resource removal, but yeah, I could see myself playing something like this at some point. Okay, one of you brought up the. Oh wait, no, we talked about orange blue. I was the guy who thought you were talking about farming. Did you want to see the? I don't know if you want to see the farming deck or not.
You know what? Let's talk about one of them. Let's talk about the one that came first.
Sure, that's a good one. That's a good way to do it. Right. Now, to some extent, I imagine people are already pretty familiar with this particular farming deck. Anyone who's been playing in the Coco tournaments has probably met Richard Owens's purple farm at some point.
I actually haven't.
Oh, you haven't actually? Okay.
Yeah, I never had a single game with him.
Well, this was actually my first round match at Everfree was against him, and well, guys looking at the thread, you know that this deck's undefeated, so you know how that match went. But it was close at least. He beat me by 1 point, so at the time limit. So yeah, but yeah, the purple style is definitely a little bit more of a, I want to say, aggressive kind of farm, just because you have some friends to work with, and like if the opponent shuts down your deck as a farming deck, it's relatively easy to transition into an aggro deck that just says, okay, now I've got 6 counters or so on Applejack, and I'm just gonna play this aggro, and you can do that. And like a card like, say, Spike, which is my major thing, is a lot worse against that kind of deck when my supply of troublemakers is a little bit lower, say, for example, and the opponent isn't playing theirs because they're going aggro instead of farm.
Can I just say one thing I really like about this deck?
Mm-hmm.
It's just 15 playsets.
Yeah.
It's true.
So neat and tidy.
Yeah, that's been refined, I imagine.
I myself would probably change Appelus's Backball team to Rescue Party, because it's pretty much the same, but with extra flips.
Yeah, I guess 6 power instead of 3. So looking at that, it's hang on a second. Let me look it up really quickly here. What are all the abilities that card has? It's got quite a few.
It has Stubborn, and it has immediate. During a face-off, you may give another card plus 3 power.
Sorry, I was talking about Rescue Party, not.
It can be Frightened, and it flips you an additional card during a face-off, so one wing it.
Right.
But it costs 1 more 80, and it has 6 power. I guess the advantage of Appaloosa Backball team is that you can just buff your own troublemakers in case your opponent wants to fight them.
Yeah, I think that that happens on occasion. Very important.
It also can give your flipped card plus 3, which is weird. Because that's a card involved.
Is that a card involved in the face-off?
I don't know, that's how I've been playing it.
I'm not sure.
No, I don't think so. The card involved is cards in play.
Yeah. Although
it doesn't make that much of a difference.
Yeah, it's functionally the same effect. Okay.
That is a weird question now.
Otherwise you would be able to dismiss like a flipped card with Yoink or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Only.
No, it's not a friend in play, but it could. The technicality rubbish that was in my head.
Yeah.
Because for me, the idea, like when I read this, I basically read it as exhaust this card to give another card that's adding power to the face-off plus 3. That's what I consider to be involved.
Right.
Rather than having to physically be in play.
No, it's a different definition.
It's weird.
But yeah, this deck has shown some pretty surprising resilience for. This thing's been around since like round 1 of Coco, I think, in virtually the same form, and it's been sitting pretty close to the top. Granted, only Richard's been playing it, but still pretty close to the top each time. So impressive feat of engineering from his part.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that like it remains unchanged from the very start. Like it's exactly the same deck he played at the very first Coco.
Okay, so that probably brings us to an end of all the interesting things to talk about in core, I think. The only other one that probably... give me 1 second. I'm looking for a second here at your own deck here, Grandpa's, for Harmony, just to see if it's actually interesting or if it's just... it's kind of the usual boxing. No offense intended. So I suppose
Sorry? Isn't it the same deck he played in Harmony at Babs?
It's possible. Possibly some minor
Looks
tweaks.
like the same.
Certainly working to the same effect. These big deck lists with singletons and stuff, it's sometimes hard to see when one card gets changed or whatever. But besides that, it's probably worth mentioning this novel combo deck that saw some play. Just for the laughs, if nothing else. Are you guys? I think you're familiar with it, Hithrock.
Yeah, I am.
Solving, are you familiar with this combo deck?
Which one in the list is it?
It's 104 and 3 FM.
What? You cut out on my side, sorry.
104 and 3 FM, the cheese.
Yes, there are 2 listings for it in Harmony from Ivory Starlight.
No, I looked at the list and was like, I feel like I need this explained to me.
All right, fair enough. The 104.3 FM refers to the rule that makes the deck work. Rule 104.3, which says that when the game does stuff, you can't prevent or replace it, basically. And so the idea basically is that when you have Trenderhoof in play making everything unique, then when you do a uniqueness violation, the game dismisses it, and you can't stop it from being a dismissal, even if you have What's Old is New Again active, which says when something goes to your discard pile, you would normally banish it instead, but if the game's dismissing it, you can't replace that dismissal, so it has to go to the discard pile, and that allows you to play Reese's forever for free.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the fundamental abuse, and then there's a bunch of tricks to turn that into infinite AT. Now, unfortunately, I didn't actually get the privilege of playing against this deck in a tournament, but there were a few folks who did, clearly.
It was on stream. I think Big Cheese won on turn 5, I think. He won really early.
Really, yeah?
Yeah, they had the chance to play another game.
Impressive. Yeah, I suppose, as always happens whenever a new combo deck enters the meta, there is room for discussion about what to do about it, as it were.
I mean, I would say it's quite like the rule itself is quite intuitive. Like it says banish instead because uniqueness violation is dismissal by the game. Like without looking into the rules specifically, you would never tell that the card is not actually banished.
Yeah, essentially. It's as chat mentioned.
Honestly, I think the answer is to just shift the rules a little bit, because it is literally just abusing a weird bit of rules.
Yeah, to
fix it, just edit the rules.
I don't know. That's definitely Enderplay's expertise. The thing is that particular rule, I know, was added to prevent other weird stuff from happening, basically. And so tweaking it, well, so long as you're careful, you should be able to get away with it. But it's definitely something to tread softly on.
Because I feel like with it how it is now, you could tweak it just to say you can't trigger or activate abilities to change it. But because What's Old is New Again is like a static thing that's already happened, it could work still, or something like that. Obviously, you'd probably need to do a little more research than me just coming up with that solution like that. But, at its base form, it shouldn't be too difficult to sort of keep it. Or you go whole hog and just ban Trenderhoof because he's weird.
Yeah, I mean, this is... Yeah, it's worth pointing out that, this wasn't exactly a meta-destroying...
It didn't come first or anything like that, so needing to ban it isn't technically what you need to do.
Yeah.
But it basically shows a sort of... What's the way to put it? It shows a fault in the rules, I guess. A card that's got its own balancing written on it, in this scenario, doesn't have the balancing written on it, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is weird.
It's weird. I don't know if it's necessarily... Yeah. It's really worth taking action on. Like, it is not the strongest combo that we've ever seen by far. I obviously can't say it's Harmony, because Harmony is still a format that we care about, so can't just throw it to the wolves, as it were. I don't know. I don't know if this deck is. It's not even really approaching the line, I think, where it needs to be dealt with. Like, perhaps some sort of rules clarification does need to be made, just so that it is more intuitive that this sort of thing works.
Yeah.
Or if you view the rules as faulty to an extent, then to fix them. But
yeah, because honestly, the only reason why I think it needs to be changed is because obviously what's old is new again has a very obvious internal balancing system.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rules can just sort of go, no, let's ignore that. And the fact that it kind of does that is not very good. I just consider that a bad thing in general for card design. And as obviously Hithrock said, it's like, to most people, it would just go banished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, unless you specifically look up section whatever, what is it? Go on, I'll just look at the deck list. 1.104.3, you would just think, oh, it just goes away.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, actually, I think that we come back to Trenderhoof sometimes, and I honestly think that might be one of the more obvious places to fix. Like, I had this thought a while back that you could just say that no card is allowed to alter another card's traits, and that messes with Trenderhoof, that messes with Old Philomena, that makes everything into critters, and that messes with Bisou, that makes things a critter. But those are the only 3 cards that change other cards' traits.
No, also the Crystal Head.
Oh, that's right. Makes things crystal, yeah.
Also, changing traits feels like it has game design around it, honestly. Because if we get back to something like Teamwork, and then you had a card that's like, I don't know, that lets you just add a trait to a single friend or something, so that you could then do, oh, this Earth Pony is a Pegasus now for the sake of my Pegasus tribal things, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, sort of taking that entirely out of the game feels like you're restricting design. I do think it is just sort of editing and tweaking how the game doing things due to rules works slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, it's like, I understand why they would be like, well, you can't replace how it works, but I feel like it should be able to be somewhat influenced by more static things and less reactive things.
Sure. That has some sense to it.
Also, interestingly enough, this deck doesn't have many Defenders of Equestria or Sequestria cards. So it could have been existed during Marks and Time as well.
Yeah, barring the Grubber is the only Sequestria card.
And Tempest.
Oh yeah,
and herself,
of course. Yeah. Defenders is just, well, we've got a couple of them in there. Just Luna's Future and the Herd and Mimics. Yeah, this probably could have existed back in Marks. Provided that the rule required isn't more recent than that. Although,
yeah, I was going to say maybe the rules changed to let this work recently. I don't know.
No, I think it was around Marks and Time.
Okay.
Sure.
I haven't inwardly digested the rules that much.
Mm-hmm. Well, in any event, it's quite possible we just devoted a lot more time than the subject really deserved there. But anyway, as happens, Grandpa's, you're there in the chat. This is what happens when you introduce new combos to the meta. People talk about them. Anyway, the other major sort of point of issue about the game that I kind of wanted to touch on was, and we talked about Richard's farming deck just a little while back, but to go back to the core results, 1, 2, 3 farming decks up on top of the tournament. And I know I've said often enough that I was really looking forward to that archetype going away when core started, and that hasn't happened. And so I remember hearing mutterings around the tournament and somewhat after it that perhaps a modification may be necessary there. Whether that be, there are lots of different ways to do it, but whether the presence of such a resilient archetype in the game that, as we know, farming tends to be rather static. Like there are a bunch of different versions of it around right now. The purple, the blue, the pink. But it would seem reasonable to expect that as we move through this particular block, the deck's probably not going to change that much, based on our experience in the past. Whether that presence is a negative effect on the metagame.
I mean, I think it has a negative effect on player engagement. Simply because the whole point of core, or at least in my mind when they announced it, was here's something different. And then if everyone's like, oh, sweet, I'll build a deck, I'll start brewing. And then they just face farming for the 8 trillionth time. What's actually changed?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Like, so as like someone who's been who's kind of been sick of farming for a while, like just playing against it, I've never enjoyed it. It's not been that fun. And as someone who knows many people who are sick of playing against farming, the fact that it's just kept persisting is absolutely terrible. It's honestly made loads of people I know just not really want to go to big tournaments or anything. It's like, well, I'm just going to play against that deck I hate playing against. What's the point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's true also that farms counters aren't particularly... It's essentially... Back in Harmony, I remember, like, you had some kind of a counterplay to it in, like, Fast Blue a little bit. Like, it was basically decks like Hot Wings either won before things got locked down or else they just lost. Which, maybe if you really analyze that matchup, you find it interesting, but that doesn't sound particularly great to me. Or you had the hardcore purple and pink control on the other side, which lost the early game and then managed to stabilize, usually with the farming deck at like 12 points or something. And from that point on, then purple just wins because you've got your win conditions in play. And sure enough, these days the farming deck's going to be running main 6 probably if they're the pink version, and maybe there's some interplay there. But it's true that, to some perspective, the matches against farming are even in the ones where the opponent, the non-farming player, has a chance, they're still generally kind of a cookie cutter of how the match is going to go.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why, like, the one big tournament I've ever been to, and I was actually invested in, because it was Block 2 when it had 3 sets.
Mm-hmm.
So easily, not enough to do farming. And so I actually was like, I can brew. I don't have to go, I have to run 3 cardboard box and all these things that I just kind of didn't want to do. I could just be like, okay, so I'm expecting there to be fairly aggressive stuff. I'm expecting there to be fairly controlling stuff. And maybe the odd thing that can try and do both. And like, I just sort of had to prepare for all these general things rather than having to be like, oh yes, I'm going to face this deck and I'm going to be doing this. And that's honestly like probably the time I've had the most fun with the game was when I was preparing for that tournament. It absolutely drained me. Oh my gosh, I didn't want to play the game for like a month afterwards because I was just so tired of playing it so much. But while I was doing it, I had so much fun. Like, it was super good. And like, even to this day, I'm like, I just want to play Party of One. I just love the card. It's really fun. And everyone else I played against hates it, and they're sick of me playing it. But I just love it. It is so fun.
Might lose a couple of friends, but you get yourself some prizes.
Hey, it does exactly as the card says. But yeah, and like, so when Core got announced, I was like, oh sweet, I can't wait to see all the interesting stuff people come up with. Oh wait, they printed staff. What was I expecting?
Yeah.
And things like that. It's just, oh man, maybe farming won't be that great. Oh hey, look, they printed a card that gives your main +3 power and helps them control the board. Woo.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's probably the best point to make. That if players are expecting a breath of fresh air, as it were, it's true that things are a little bit different because the farming deck doesn't have. I'm trying to think of important cards that they lost.
Nightmare Moon, maybe?
Nightmare Moon, yeah. Like, actually...
Some villains, I guess.
Yeah, like, the epics got shuffled out and replaced with new epics. So, functionally it feels essentially the same. There's less villains. That's worth pointing out, so you don't have to be as scared about everything getting frightened. But, yeah. I have a hard time thinking of, like, cards that didn't get replaced with better cards.
Yeah.
Like, stick. And...
Cause like, it's things that...
I think we lost him there.
Yeah.
There we go.
My Discord does this.
Yep.
Really. But I'm back. Anyway, so as I was saying, it's like, so like if you had someone who's been consistently playing the best farming deck in your local metagame, chances are as soon as you shifted to core, they really didn't even change that much again.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's always the way I sort of try to look at it from if in a local game store you've got the guy running this deck and sort of they always want to run it. If you are going to consistently play against this person, how different will your games be in your local game shop? And with farming, yeah, as we said a few times, not really.
Mm-hmm. Your counterplay deck changed a fair amount, as people pointed out. Like Ursa Vanquisher's gone. A lot of the cards that were good against farming before rotated out. So if you were trying to build the counter deck, then sure, that's perhaps a different experience for you. But like fundamentally, the card types that you value are still the same.
Yeah.
The ability to keep Applejack off the problems, essentially. So, yeah. But as you point out, if we're well, you didn't really point this out, but if we're considering taking some intervention, there are those players who I happen to know a few of them who they're the farming players, and if you make a change to the game that makes farming worse, it's entirely possible those players just stop playing. And there's an argument to be made that we really probably can't afford to do that right now.
There's also an argument to be made for, oh, hey, guys, they killed farming, and suddenly everyone who left because they got sick of it could come back. But obviously that's a more theoretical game, whereas the whole farmers leaving is more of a realistic loss, unfortunately. But then there's also the argument to make, if if you do want to stick a massive blame for player loss on farming, which I can't be 100% sure it is, like, its fault. I think it's got had a small influence. I know for sure from just being on groups that cared about the game, etc., and seeing multiple complaints. But like, is getting rid of it going to help the long-term health, even if it affects the short-term health? And it's like an absolutely massive debate could be had about it, and I feel like you could sit there and stats it out even if you wanted to look at, like, tournament attendance, how many people, what percentage are villain farming, and blah blah blah. And
it's a really confounding problem, because there are a lot of things that you could point to right now and say, this is the reason that the game's not going to last another year or whatever, if you wanted to be a pessimist. Make a point out, by the way, that I am an optimist about. But yeah.
I myself have a little bit of different perspective from you, because I'm a new player and I've only ever played against farming once in my life, so okay. I'm not sick of it yet, at least. And I myself quite like that. Like, there's an archetype like that. So I think, like, speaking, like, getting rid of farming completely is kind of a bit too much. Maybe make it a little bit less stronger, so it's not present everywhere. Like, free farming decks on top of the list is a bit too much. But getting rid completely is just nah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a very valid point to make. That I have been playing the game for like a year or so when Rock and Rave first came out, way back when, and then, when farming first became a thing, right? And back then, I know, wistful times, right? Back then, it was like, wow, this is a really cool deck that does really cool things that, like, that nothing else can do, and it is good for games to have that kind of innovation happening, where suddenly this new archetype arrives that plays completely differently to anything else. It is perhaps somewhat telling that we haven't really had something like that happen since Farm went in. Not that that's a knock on Farm.
I was about to say, like, the issue is that innovation hasn't happened since farming, which might be due to how the game works itself, or it might just be because no matter how hard you innovate, it can't be better than what farming did to the game.
It's possible. Like, I
don't know.
I remember having a discussion with someone, I believe it was Sokol, actually, at Everfree, to the extent of, like, whenever some new disruptive thing happens in the game, you can't just immediately ban it, because every new awesome thing that we look at these days and say, oh yeah, that's just a part of the game, at some point that was a disruptive thing that was like, no, this isn't the way the game was meant to be played. Right? So it's kind of, you have to be really careful with how much you regulate people who really change that kind of stuff.
Yeah. From hearing your, like, points about farming, I think your real complaint is not farming but diversity. Like, you Solving said that, like, people are sick of playing against farm. Well, that's a problem with diversity, and not specifically. The problem with farm that was pointed out is that playing against farm is kind of like cookie cutter, and that's the issue with farm. But too much farm and people getting, like, not going to tournaments because they don't want to play against farm so much. It's a diversity issue, not a farm issue, I think.
Well, it's partially that, but it's also the how do I put it? It's just generally, like, not that interesting of a deck to play against, full stop. So obviously, yeah, you could argue that it's because of diversity, but like at the end of the day, the aim of the card game is to have it so both sides of the table are having fun.
Yeah, that's true.
And this deck, for most people, I know obviously there'll be exceptions, there'll be people who enjoy it, make it so only one part of the table has fun. And sometimes when I've been watching people play the deck at tournaments, that's debatable in and of itself. Admittedly, because the farming player hasn't looked like they're enjoying themselves, admittedly. But yeah, so like I think an issue that does need to be thought about, especially with the health of the game as it is just trying to make things fun. And for a lot of people, farming doesn't make it fun. And I'll say at least farming needs a nerf. When you are the top 3 decks of a tourney, it's usually kind of clear that you need a power level reduction. But the fact that it's been so prominent for what is it, 2-3 years now?
Ooh,
I can't say
longer
for sure.
than that, I'd say.
Or is it like even 4 or something? Oh
yeah.
My god, I don't even know how old this game is at this point. Yeah, it's just like they could have done something about it in many of these years, and it still really hasn't been affected. And it's still like you still just keep saying it. It's not like a cute thing you see every now and again. It is always there. It's kind of become a joke at this point that, oh, hey, look, there's the farming.
Yeah, well...
And it's got to the point where lots of people are just kind of sick of it. And, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that now that I've said a lot of people are sick of it.
So
I feel like I'm repeating myself.
The interesting thing is that history, as you described it, essentially reminds me, if you'll allow me to dredge up some more memories of the Dark Ages, of essentially of the pile combo deck, which was around for like 2 years. Everyone got sick of it, and it took a long time for Interplay to actually do any work with it. So you could read that as to say that Interplay prefers to take a light touch with regards to decks that are just really powerful. Or you could read that in any way that you like, but I just thought that was an interesting comparison.
Yeah. Fair, Pile is a good comparison, honestly.
Yeah, I mean the point about like both players having fun can be like, the same point can be made about combo decks in general.
Yeah, I really like the Pile comparison, honestly. It's quite a good one. I remember, I think, when I just saw... I looked at sort of a big tournaments deck lists, and it was literally just farming and Pile, and I was like, woo, isn't this game diverse and fun, guys? Oh, man.
From the chat, Grandpa's did have a question for you, Solving.
Go on.
Oh, yeah, okay. How many players do you communicate with on this issue frequently, like within the last year? This issue, the context being the whole farming thing.
I have quite a few friends in the UK, like just the UK player base that I've made, especially because of the YouTube channel. I post that in the UK group because people sort of know who I am. And I infrequently sort of chit chat, and I'll see them pop up again on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, I wonder how they're doing, etc. And we'll end up talking about the card game because that's why I actually know them, and things like that. So I don't know, like I'd say 3 or 4 people that I know properly, but sort of in the past when I've been to tournaments and stuff, and people that I would say I vaguely know, and when I go to cons that are in the UK and I'll see them. Hey, even at GalaCon, I saw quite a few people and I sort of chatted to them about what they thought of the game, because obviously finding out public opinion's good for when I will eventually come back to the YouTube channel. I'm just procrastinating my other projects because I'm terrible with stuff like this, apparently. Yeah, I guess I'd say 3 consistent people, but as a giant catch-all net, when I went to GalaCon, I probably talked to like 10 or so people that I just sort of vaguely knew, and other people that I just sort of talked to because, I mean, I'm not going to see them again. Felt like playing cards. End up chatting. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
An answer.
So yeah, I don't think it's really opinion of mine here, but I don't know if it's really within our prerogative to suggest recourse or proper remedies.
I know it needs a nerf. How they want to go about it, I don't know. I think my suggestion that I had ages ago when I was like, if you just wanted to kill it, just put a thing in the rules that says you can't score points from troublemakers you control. And then it's gone. But that's like killing a bug with a rocket launcher, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
That kind of makes epic troublemakers completely unusable ever. Like an epic becomes a bad keyword.
Well, to some extent, like
it
still gets rid
of
of
the feel of. Okay. I was going to say it still has the feel of if you beat it, they don't get the points. Hey. Which I've done that before. I've beat my own troublemakers not because I wanted the points, more because I just wanted to prevent my opponent from getting them and stuff. It's a weird one.
Like, so to bring back the PAL comparison again, I'm trying to remember what exactly Interplay did to get rid of that. It was just banning Penny, right? That essentially got rid of that deck.
They got rid of the value engine.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be able to say for sure because I just avoided Harmony when Pile was a thing.
Yeah. So
in general, I was playing Block 2 most of that time.
So it would be interesting because most people who are familiar with that deck would say that was a very indirect, sort of glancing way of saying it, and so it would be nice probably if you could do something similar for farm that doesn't essentially stop the deck from doing what it does. So people who like to play it can still play it, but does something different. And as Grandpa says in the chat, that is kind of a problem, which is that essentially the card that makes all Fire decks work is the Applegate, which is generally Ambassador these days.
And if you ban the main, it's they banned this because farming.
Pretty much.
That's all you can read it as.
Essentially.
I would say again, like banning is a bit too much. Maybe tuning, yeah, but banning is too much. In my opinion.
Yeah, if like the problem is like I was thinking like you could try to touch Stick a little bit, but Stick is not just a farming card. Obviously, it's in bloody everything.
Yeah, honestly, I think Stick should be banned for its universality, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, it's the stickers just fits almost everywhere, and that's kind of.
Yeah, because it just gives a barrier to entry to playing tier 1. You say, yeah, cool, have you got your 2 or 3 stick? No? Okay, cool, your deck's not as good then.
To some degree.
And it's just like, I don't like a format having that, but that's more a personal thing, as I said.
Yeah, Grandpa's makes a good point about, but like,
yeah, ban them too.
Sure, like Singing Barrel just gives you another color, which it enables you to do weird multicolor aggro stuff and other such. Whereas,
yeah, honestly, I'd ban Singing Barrel, motivational speech. What's the problem? Trading traditions and Stick. Even if it was, this is for a 3-month period to see what you guys do.
sure.
Like, I'd at least give that a try at some point.
I don't know, like If
but that's just like me. I like the idea of being able to use ban lists to just be like, all right, bang, we're changing things.
Yeah, like
rather than, oh man, this is too good, so we'll ban specifically that. I like the idea of it being able to be just for change. But then again, as someone who's played Yu-Gi-Oh on and off throughout their life, there's been so many times where I've seen a ban list change in Yu-Gi-Oh and gone, oh, I can play again, rather than my deck just being garbage. So I guess I have a weird perspective on it.
Yeah, like one thing that came to my mind is, suppose we were like Magic and we had a much more regular cadence of new sets, and they came out much more quickly, then it wouldn't be bad to take a card like Singing Barrel and say to yourself, you know, okay, I don't really like the kind of decks that this thing enables to exist. Well, fine, it's going to rotate out in like a year or something. Then
yeah,
whatever. But the fact that realistically we can look at this and say, you know, the next set rotation is going to be probably 4 years down the line minimum, based on the way things are going. Yeah, that's a different.
Whispers of Set.
That's a different experience.
Whispers of Set 10.
Grimbaus points out that like the better argument for Styx removal is its ability to like frighten friends, because it's kind of like goes against the core aspect of the game. I should play friends, and I think I can argue with that because like the stick is far from the only card that can do repeatable removal. Like we have the Torch Great Wheel and the other cards, even the Luna Midnight, and they're more or less fine compared to the stick. Even like you could say that about any removal. Like look at the pink.
So the thing is, like, you know, take okay, you know, so like pink is a good example, but like Luna, you have to work hard to get Luna on to actually be out on the field. Like, you know, sure, maybe you play redeeming qualities or whatever, but you know, stick is 2 cost resource, no wreck. Like it's you don't really have to work particularly hard to be able to play it. And sure, it's cost 1 AT each time, but you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's okay to some extent for Luna to have such amazing value because sure, she costs 5, or otherwise you got to do tricks to get her onto the field.
But yeah, I think like overall, like as Grandpaus just said in the chat, the stick contributes to the issue that like you don't really like you can't really play powerful friends and rely on them anymore. Like you can expect them to stick for 1 turn and then go away because we have just so much removal everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like resources are way more reliable than friends most of the time.
Basically. I mean, sure, everybody's packing your 3 resource removal minimum, but yeah, that's still a lot less than the amount of friend removal you expect to be in most decks.
I was going to say, if we had a stick, like if we had an event that was like 1, no requirement, you know, dismiss a resource. At the beginning of your turn, put this card in your hand if it's in your discard pile. Resources would be garbage.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's pretty...
And that's kind of like what stick is.
That's pretty close to what Seabreeze's Flower was back in the day. Essentially. I mean, that one was...
Yeah. Which is why resources weren't particularly great.
Mm-hmm. Granted, it was a resource, so like, in the old Harmony days, you couldn't recur it with F-Stop. That would have sucked badly, but... yeah. Okay. So, I think, I mean, the conclusion that I guess we want to reach is that basically, you know, there is value in having this discussion. Hopefully, I don't know if we really came to a consensus on whether or not any action is warranted. I think for my part, it's a topic worth talking about if a greater consensus emerges that a change is necessary, then perhaps we can talk about that. But it's good to have these discussions in some public place like this one, because I've still got the tournament results thread up in front of me here, and yeah, we've got a podium sweep from Ambassador Applejack here in core, and whenever that happens for one deck, it's probably worth at least talking about it.
Yeah. To be fair, it's like it's always a difficult discussion when it comes to like, is this deck too good, etc., and things like that. It's always difficult to talk about, unless you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh, because it's like, man, this is the tier 1 deck, just get rid of it. Which, while I do like some aspects of how Yu-Gi-Oh does ban lists, there's a lot they do wrong, and like, I feel trying to make some sort of middle ground where I like the idea of a ban list that sort of makes people want to experiment is interesting, but obviously in Magic you don't need something like that half the time because rotation actually happens all the time. But with something like this, even say if there's 6 months between one set and the other, 6 months of the same metagame is kind of admittedly.
I feel like we're starting to get to the point right now where I'm starting to think, yeah, it'd be nice to see some new cards once in a while. Which,
honestly, like, I think the biggest issue this game has is the slow release schedule. And unfortunately, unless it suddenly explodes and Interplay's like, whoa, we got to invest loads of money into this because it's making us trillions and billions and whatever, it's just kind of how it's going to be.
Well, any discussion, I think, on remedies, we can perhaps save for another stream. Yeah, but I think that about covers all the post Everfree discussions I wanted to at least bring up. Either of you had any more points you wanted to make?
My point is, I'm kind of sad that Trixie didn't play Trixie deck, but a farming deck.
I was really surprised at that, actually. Like, I've played against that guy before, and go with the name. I think he was playing essentially the Trixie tribal deck last year, and that's really a shame.
I felt betrayed.
I guess the thing I would say, and the thing that stood out to me when I first looked at these results, is the fact that Draft got 20 players, but the constructed events got less than that. And even the weird Team Sealed managed to get 14 players? Is it teams of 2?
Teams of 3. That's 21.
Teams of 3. 21 players. Like, even the weird thing, like, just because it was sealed,
yeah, I mean,
managed to get more than the constructed.
Yeah.
Which I think when you're sealed stuff, well, I love sealed and think it's great, etc. And I'm glad people are liking it. When sealed gets just consistently more attendance than your constructed formats, I think you need to do something about your constructed formats.
Yeah, it is worth pointing out that the with the constructed tournaments lacking the cut to top 8 this year, which that was very much an intentional choice on part of the organizers. Myself, say for example, as a relatively serious constructed player, I wasn't as excited about the tournament. So it's that was a choice that was made. It's entirely reasonable to expect that there might have been a somewhat depressed turnout for the constructed tournaments that way. As Grandpa's pointed out in the chat, that area is kind of a limited hotbed, as you would call it.
Oh, okay. As someone who wasn't even intending to go to it because it's in America and so I can't. I didn't know that. So I guess that's obviously had an impact on it.
Yeah. So
also, good job on getting third.
Oh, in draft, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a really fun draft, basically, because I was in this group, and I remember like off the start, I was going for orange and white, and then either on the second pack or the third pack, second pack I drafted a royal rare, or on one of these packs I got royal rare Tempest, which was like, okay, I guess I'm playing purple now. And then on one of the packs, it might have been that same pack, I passed a party mare, pink, and it came back around to me, and I'm like, oh, I guess no one else in this pod's drafting pink. So then I just said, okay, guess I'm drafting pink. And yeah, that's the deck.
Yeah. To be fair, the time I drafted at a big tourney, it had a feel like that. One of my first picks was photo finish.
Mm-hmm.
And I just came to the conclusion no one was playing white. I got a Method Mare's pass to me. It was great.
Mm. Yeah, when you're drafting...
I think my biggest mistake was not to play mono white. I played white blue, and I should have just gone straight mono white because there were so many cards I passed up to pick the odd good blue card, and I should have just taken the really good white card.
Yeah, when you're the only guy in your group going for a particular color, it's usually not hard to get the good cards. Although, if you've had the time to watch the draft stream matches, Cheese's deck was actually insane as well. It feels like he was probably the only guy getting purple in his group. So, yeah. Yeah, draft was a really fun time.
Honestly, if there's one thing I want to commend and to play about is the limited formats recently have been so fun. Like each pre-release I've been to, I've just been like, yes, that was super fun.
Yeah, there was the small little snafu of Marks and Time having one good draft main and two less good ones, but they.
Oh my gosh, Scootaloo, why?
We reacted to that.
Yeah. To be fair, you want to know how my local play group balanced that?
Go ahead.
We just said you can run the those three mains aren't playable. You can run the Equestrian Odysseys ones.
Oh yeah, that works.
Because they're actually fairly balanced to limited. Obviously, Applejack's still really strong and stuff, but like they're actually kind of close to one another on power level.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's not like it's true that even from Defenders was okay. Sequestria, you really try to avoid playing orange or white if you can, because Grover and Capper are less impressive mains. Although, to be fair, we had the Team Seal team that I was on. We had, I believe Grandfather's played Capper, I think. I'm sure he did. And I was playing Grover. And we did okay.
Yeah, in Team Sealed you have a much larger pool than in Draft or just Sealed.
Yeah. But, in any event, I think that'll take us to our sort of closing off. We are, of course, back on our usual schedule, which means our next stream is going to be the 10th of June, 2 weeks from now, and we'll get that whatever the topic's going to be out to you at some point. if you missed the stream, you're not here to hear me say this, but if you know any friends who wanted to see our content but weren't able to tonight, you can direct them to our YouTube channel, which should be on the screen right now down at the bottom. This week's stream is going to be up there probably in a couple of hours after I get it uploaded. Besides that, I suppose we'll see you in a fortnight. I have been Cursed Chords.
I've been solving problems.
And Hifrock.
And yeah, see you in a fortnight.
See ya.
Bye.